swear they better release a director's cut of this movie where Jenna Malone has more than 2 seconds of screen time. The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 is directed by Francis Lawrence, written by Danny Strong and Peter Craig, still based on the book by Suzanne Collins, and stars Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, Woody Harrelson, Elizabeth Banks, Donald Sutherland, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Julianne Moore. And in The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, after Katniss is retrieved from the arena at the end of Catching Fire, she is brought to the underground district of District 13, which is thought to be blown up. And here, Julianne Moore, who plays President Alma Coin, is spearheading this rebellion, this nationwide revolution against the capital, and they want Katniss to be their Mockingjay, or the face of the rebellion. Now, I've mentioned this before, I was really disappointed with the book Mockingjay when I read it, because I thought it really just kind of strayed away from a lot of the major themes of the series, and focused a bit too much on the love triangle aspect. I only got more nervous when I heard they were splitting it into 2 movies. I really didn't think there was enough material in the book to split into 2 movies, but I was kind of optimistic because Francis Lawrence did such a good job with Catching Fire. I thought that, he would know what to do with this material to really kind of make it better on screen. So this is how I'm gonna put it. Francis Lawrence did his best with what he was given. I mean, this movie looks great, it has great acting in it. It's just that the weakness of the source material really does show in the lackluster story. Firstly, one of the things you'll notice right off the bat with Mockingjay Part 1, even if you just watch the trailers, is that it's much less colorful than the first 2 movies. The color palette is really just all grays and rubble and whatnot, but I'm actually fine with this because I feel like it's a natural progression of the story. The first 2 movies had everything so colorful and superficial, and now we kind of peel back those colors and those layers and we get to see what's lying beneath all it, and it's just rubble. What's interesting also is that the production design of everything is just so bland, but like in a good way. I mean, like everyone's wearing jumpsuits and uniforms. Like the place, District 13 itself, looks like a military bunker. And you begin to question, is District 13 really as free as they think they are if, what they're doing is just so rigid and militaristic? It really kind of, it tells more story than some of the actual script. So yeah, it's impressive how the visuals are able to kind of touch on certain themes that some of the dialogue and some of the conversations really can't. Also, in terms of like visual effects and stuff, there's not as much in this movie as in the first 2, I think. But there's a certain moment at the end where you see a character who's really skinny, but that actor or actress, I'm not gonna say, did not actually lose weight. So like the CGI to make that person lose weight actually really fooled me, and I was really impressed. The music and the sound design overall is still very solid across the board. It gets really good like by the end during certain tense moments. But out of all the music in the movie, definitely the thing that stands out is the Hanging Tree, which is a song that Katniss sings, and it's gonna be stuck in your head forever. It's really catchy, and it really like just lyrically, it says a lot about like the situation they're in. And despite this movie not having any actual Hunger Games in it, I still appreciated how we were able to kind of see how the actions of District 13 and the capital affected each other and affected the other districts. Some of the people in the other districts start, you know, rioting and whatnot. Like Plutarch said in Catching Fire, it's all about moves and counter moves, and I like how we're still able to see that. The editing also really gets great by the ending parts, which are really tense and really, really eerie, because they also look great, by the way, with like, it's just all stained in red. It looked like Godzilla. If there's one thing in this script for this movie that they were able to retain from the first 2, it's that, when people talk, it's very strategic. It's like everything again is just moves and counter moves. You don't know if people are lying to each other, etc., etc. It's interesting how Katniss is really just trying to retain her humanity in this district, despite the rest of the district, just kind of using her as a prop. And do I seriously have to say again that Jennifer Lawrence does a good job as Katniss? It's interesting where her character goes in this movie because she's finally learning how to become a leader, but Jennifer Lawrence really is able to sell the fact that she really doesn't know what she's doing. Someone who gets a lot more screen time, definitely, and really kind of takes the spotlight away from Peta is Liam Hemsworth, who has no problem becoming cold and stoic, but still sympathetic. I mean, he was in The Expendables. Woody Harrelson, Donald Sutherland, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and Natalie Dormer also as Cressida. They should have had much more screen time, but then I still think they're kind of interesting to watch. But hands down, my favorite thing about this movie is Elizabeth Banks as Effie Trinket, because we really get to see a different kind of Effie here, and it's like really like all the makeup has just been taken away literally and figuratively, and we really get to see what she's like. And it's so nice to see that she's still very sincere despite everything that's happening. She's really like the only sane person left in District 13. Francis Lawrence still knows how to direct action in a really tense and exciting way. I mean, he doesn't really get to do a lot of it in this movie, but for the most part, they are very solidly directed. Especially the ending parts, which I keep mentioning because they really are, good. They really do stand out because you can tell that they're leading towards something really promising. But those promising parts are gonna happen in part two, so we don't see them now. And you really gotta give credit to Francis Lawrence for making things still feel familiar in this world, even if Mockingjay Part 1, like in terms of visuals and whatnot, is just so drastically different from the first two. And then we get to the problems about the movie. First of all, this did not have to be two parts at all. Like, I don't think it's justified at all because this movie kind of ditches what the first two movies were so good at doing, which was juggling different themes and whatnot. But in this movie, they ditched that juggling act for in favor of stretching out like really small details and tiny scenes just to a 2 hour running time, and nothing really happens in this movie in a bad way. I feel like they focus too much on the propaganda aspect, which is interesting at first, but then they keep doing it and it's like we get it, and nothing really happens. You don't feel like the characters are really growing. They're just kind of reiterating the same character points. And as good as the ending parts are, there's a certain part near the end where I really feel like they just really did not handle the editing well, because there's certain characters who are doing this one thing while one character is giving like a speech, but then they just keep cutting from one to the other and it just kind of loses coherence. They should have just kind of combined the two. Francis Lawrence really proved in Catching Fire that he's really adept at action scenes and world building, but here he really runs out of steam with all like the conversation scenes, people just talking, because I really feel like themes in this movie, like Katniss being used as a prop, or this new government that's rising that might be just as bad as the old government, those themes really weren't that palpable. They didn't really dive into them at all. But the biggest problem with the movie really is just the weakness of the source material. This story, it doesn't feel like it has any urgency to it. I mean, they're supposed to be in the midst of this big war with the capital, but you don't really feel it because a lot of the time it's just kind of them sitting down and talking, and I get that it's happening in the background, but you really just don't feel it. And a lot of the characters here don't have development anymore. Like, nothing's really new about Haymitch or Plutarch or President Snow even. Julianne Moore's character, especially President Alma Coin, is the most generic character ever in this entire franchise. Like, I know she's really supposed to be someone important and special, but you really don't remember her at all. In the end, I'm gonna say that The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 is just an okay movie, unfortunately. If you're a big die-hard fan of The Hunger Games, I'm not gonna change your mind about anything. You're gonna love this movie, and I respect that. But here's to hoping the second part of Mockingjay like really just kind of changes things up. I hope Francis Lawrence gets his groove back. Please, please, please end it on a high note. What did you guys think of Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Whatever you thought, whether you agreed with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.